got a full agenda tonight. Thank you all for being here. I think we had rain last month when we drove to Hickory, and there was rain tonight. So, we'll call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Agenda revisions. We do need to add under agenda revisions, we have 2 new policies. Anita, you put that in everybody's place. Yeah, you should have gotten them by email, but they're also at your place on 2 new policies, so we'll have to approve those. Okay? And at this time, we are going to open the public hearing for our budget for fiscal year 2014-2015. And it is what, 6:03, is that what? Okay, 6:03. Okay, citizen recognition. We do have somebody here tonight, Miss K.Short, who is going to address the board, and you will have 5 minutes. And we welcome your comments, but we will not comment on anything said during this public comment session, okay?
Yes, okay. I appreciate that. Hi, my name is K.Short, and I am actually from Taylorsville, which makes me actually in the Smoky Mountain Center. But I am here to address you on a number of issues. First of all, I sent an email to Ms. Lingefelt asking when the Executive Board and the Finance Committee and the Quality Improvement Committee meet, because those are also public meetings and they are not posted to your events calendar in any way, shape, or form. And I have not received an email response. I sent that email on June 11th. The second issue I wanted to address you all on was the relative as provider policy and the relative as provider, I guess, review committee. It seems that I have run across a number of families who have been denied the opportunity to even work 40 hours. These are family members on the innovations waiver. So these are your IDD consumers. The waiver that was effective October 1st, I think, of 2013 is very clear in its wording where it says, let me turn to the page, because it's a big change from the previous waiver that you all transitioned to when you became an MCO, but it's very specific. It now says, it is recommended that relatives residing in the home of the recipient provide no more than 40 hours per week of services to the person. If additional hours are requested to be provided by relatives residing in the home of the recipient, then justification needs to be provided as to why other providers are not available, and assurances that provider choice and that the individual will not be isolated from their community. So the old waiver had that other providers and not isolated stuff before the statement about the 40 hours. So it seems that there's a little bit of work that needs to be done with the relative as provider group to determine whether they're following the actual waiver document and what it does allow. I also wanted to briefly address your partner's relative as guardian policy. I ran across an issue that was quite scary to me, where a family was having difficulty again being approved, and the service provider agency actually emailed the care coordinator with the, I guess a narrative would be the best way to describe it, as to the issues that the service provider agency was having with trying to find staff. So I'm trying to understand why a care coordinator would be involved they're not supposed to be involved in the relative as provider determination. And in fact, on page 5 of your policy, it says that providers should direct questions to their provider network specialist. So I suppose we'll be filing a complaint against the actual service provider agency and your care coordinator. But again, there appears to be some education that could actually be occurring. So I had hoped to be able to actually meet the Surrey County representatives. I don't see that the county commissioner is here, but is there another representative from Surrey County? Hi, nice to meet you. I hope we have a chance to talk later. I guess that's really all I have to say at this point. I hope to be attending your meetings regularly and recording your meetings. We do that with the Smoky Mountain meetings, and they appear on YouTube. So we'll be posting my very shaky video. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Short.
Oops.
Okay, consent agenda, let's move down to consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the May 15 board minutes? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Let's move on to reports, and we'll go first to Finance Committee report. Mr. Ferguson.
Good evening. The Finance Committee met via conference call on Tuesday, June 17, 2014. Steve Epperson, David Eisenhower, Bill Purchase attended. Staff was Neil Gustafson and Susan Lack. First item, we approved the May 12, 2014 Finance Committee minutes, which you'll find on page 5 and 6 in your agenda package. And is directed by the, directed by the Finance Committee, and move approval of these minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Second item, we reviewed and approved budget revision number 7 for fiscal year 14. This basically, and let's see, this is on.
Page 9.
Okay, page 9. I don't have it back. Basically, this is a year-end cleanup the numbers, get your budget and balance. It also recognizes allocation letter number 11 and contract addendums. Our current budget is $306,271,316, and this will increase it to $306,713,104. Directed by the Finance Committee, I move approval of this budget amendment.
Coming from the spending committee doesn't need a second. Oh, excuse me.
I just took a bite. Sorry. Okay, so is that, so what now? Yeah, any discussion? Chris?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Of course, we have already discussed our budget, as you know, in previous sessions and presented to the board. We did review the April financial statements and dashboard board reports. I'll give you some key balance sheet ratios. Our current ratio is 4.76 to 1. Our Medicaid only current ratio is 3.28 to 1. Our defensive ratio is 74.4 days of operating cash on hand. We currently have a surplus of around $24 million. Our expenses on our IBNR for April is $10,418,275, which is, as we've discussed before, it's come down quite a way since when we first started in the $18 million range. Our medical expense ratio on Medicaid is still at 88.5%, not at the desired 95%, which we're somewhat concerned about. Claims processing, we are paying in 6.3 days from date received, which is excellent. Our operating results remain positive 10 months into the fiscal year, which has been pretty much the same way it's been for the last 2 years. These folks have done an excellent job. That's about the end of my report. I'll tell you, this is my final report as Finance Committee Chairman.
Look at him
It's
grinning.
ready. I expect applause. I mean, no applause. We've had a very dedicated committee. Our members have done a good job of coming to meetings, and Niels and Susan have done a great job for us, and Debbie Hatley, who was Susan's predecessor, and even Rhett occasionally visited us. Although we have asked on many occasions for board members to meet with us, only one actually showed up one time. Dinah Daniels accidentally thought she was supposed to be there, and we made her stay anyway. She did show up. But it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. We appreciate it. Any further reports or comments for finance, Mr. Eskelson or Ms. Lackey? Nope. We're in good shape, right? Okay.
It's a hard job.
Welcome. Okay, let's move on to CFAC report. Ms. Mitchell.
All right, our CFAC met June 9th, and Mr. Niels Eskelson gave us a thorough lesson on budgeting and overview of the budget. And we had 4 CFAC members who have just been to Raleigh just yesterday for a state panel on IDD, and they also attended the spring policy forum. We filled a vacancy for Yadkinville, so we have all 3 representatives for IDD, mental health, and substance abuse now for Yadkinville. The partner CFAC will meet next on July 14th, and we'll be working on our strategic goals and how to address the gaps.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, let's move on to CEO report, Mr. Melton.
Thank you. Just a couple of things I wanted to share with the board, and we'll do maybe like we did in the last couple of months. We'll start at the state level, work down through the West Regional Partnership level, and then get to the local partner-specific issues. On the state level, a couple of things going on. Obviously, the House and the Senate are in session. A lot has been going on in terms of legislation. The budgets have been proposed now from both sides of the House budget version as well as the Senate budget version. There are many differences, and many differences that significantly impact us. Several things, as late as today, there was the Joint Legislative Oversight Committee met today with a bill that was introduced late last night. It has huge ramifications for us. I was out of town this afternoon and didn't get a chance to listen to the Legislative Oversight Committee meeting. We had colleagues that were there as well as the NC Council. So we'll be getting some information from that later tonight, I'm sure, and I'll get that out to everybody tomorrow so that you can see what's going on there. The other thing that I will try to get out to all the board members is a comparative analysis that's been done that it shows you the Senate impact, the items of the Senate budget version that impact what we do, and the House budget version that impact what we do. And you'll note all these differences now have to get resolved through the conference committee. The conferees have been named, and the conference committee will now have to reconcile all those differences. So we'll be advocating, for one way or another, depending on what the issue is. Sometimes it's an agreement that we have with the House version, and it may be something specific that we agree with the Senate version. But that's the process that they're now engaged in. So again, a lot of things with regards to the Medicaid reform plan, the timing of that, and what the role is, or the relationship that NCOs would have in the future kind of order of things are all in flux right now. One of the things that we had our Mercer review back in February or March, and we got our report, and we share with you that it's a very good report. We have gone through, and we sent a response back to both DHHS and Mercer on some language in the report that we felt like could be better worded and just more clarity given the report. So we sent that information back to DHHS. They forwarded our comments to Mercer, and we're waiting on our final report. When we get that in, again, we'll share that with everybody. Again, no big surprises in the report. The report did compliment us in a number of areas and highlighted some of the good things that are going on within partners. And again, we were very pleased with where the progress that we've made in the first year of our operations. You'll remember back before we launched our waiver, we had these things called INT calls. And the INT call is a call with the department leadership, and it has membership from the Department of Mental Health as well as the Department of Medical Assistance. So it's the state side of things as well as the Medicaid side of things. And so what we have now is we have those phone calls that don't happen every month. We had the Mercer visit, and we had our 6-month call a couple of weeks ago. And that gave us a chance to, again, update them on some key areas of things that are going on. The call went great. There's nothing that we need to do as a result of that phone call. They'll send out minutes of the phone call. But it gave us a chance just to express to them some concerns we had with some of the policy interpretations within the department. Give us a chance to highlight for them some of the things that we're doing to meet the state's objectives. So again, from that standpoint, at state level, everything's going good, and we're in a good place. So as we drop down from the state level to the Western Regional Partnership level, just to give you an update on where things are. We talked to you last month, and we said that we purposely have not moved to try to get resolution on some of the bigger issues about merger. And instead deciding to focus on the more, what we consider to be the more important things, and that is to align our operations with our peers, trying to coordinate with our peers and come up with better ways of doing business, and to come up with ways of addressing the true intent behind the Secretary's mental health reform plan, how we're going to do better at integration of care between physical medicine and the MHD SA arena. How do we do a better job of creating access opportunities for consumers? How do we streamline operations for our providers? And how we really turn the attention towards ensuring within our system that consumers are getting what they need from the system. So we have spent a lot of time, that work continues to go very well with our colleagues. There's some big items that we're working on now, specifically on how to improve our call access operations amongst the three of us. How to streamline the process that our providers go through in terms of credentialing and contracting. And so significant progress is being made on those fronts with our Western Regional Partnership. Again, we purposely kind of put on hold, if you've not put on hold, that's probably not the right way of saying this, but we didn't focus right now on the things related to merger or timing of merger or those things because we knew that those were being addressed by the legislature. And we wanted the legislative session to run its course so that we didn't get out in front of anything that might happen in Raleigh. So now that that's starting to come to an end, and once this conference resolution happens, and we really know what their intent is, that process will pick back up in a pretty aggressive way after the legislative session. So you'll continue to hear the reports about what we're doing on the consolidation front, but you'll start to hear more, and the board steering committee will probably get picked back up into high gear sometime in August or early September to start planning towards an eventual merger or relationship with the three organizations coming together. So that's really the state issue and what's going on with the Western Regional Partnership thing. So if we drop down from there and talk about some of the things unique to what's going on within partners, I'll ask Paul if he doesn't mind giving a quick update. Several of you attended and you heard from him last month talk about the hub concept and kind of the road show that we went on, and Paul's the one that put that together and did that. So Paul, you might give us an update.
Sure, thank you. First, I want to thank several of you who were there for those meetings. We finished up seven meetings last night, one in each county with the exception of combining Surrey and Yadkin, to talk about the behavioral health hub, integrated care facility, you know, lots of terms, lots of names have been used to describe this. The meetings went, I think, very well. I mean, there were obviously different patterns of conversation in each meeting because each community has slightly different needs. I guess the smallest group we had was maybe 15 or 20 people. The largest was in Gastonia, where I think it was in excess of 60 people altogether that were there for that one. And we had, you know, probably the best conversation we had was actually in Burke County, where we actually had one of the physicians, a primary care physician there, as well as the practice manager for another primary care operation. So we really got into some good discussion about the integration of behavioral health with physical medicine and where we hope to be heading. But mostly I want to thank, you know, you folks that were there, and it was a real good process. Where we go from here is still uncertain, and these meetings were early. You know, these were conceptual meetings. These were to talk about, here's an idea, let's get your feedback, let's figure out what the pros and cons are, what some of the obstacles are going to be. And what we're going to do now is take all the feedback we got from those meetings, questions, comments, good ideas, and we were able to mine some nuggets of some really good ideas that came out of those meetings. And we'll summarize all that and send it back out to everybody who participated in the meetings. We'll have this sent out, and we'll copy you folks as well in terms of those issues. And now we'll start the process of looking at either existing organizations who want to collaborate and become part of the hub model, and or, you know, depending on sequence and who's interested, we may be RFPing some hub processes, some hub arrangements in the near future. That's basically where we are, and for those of you who are there, if there are any questions, or those of you who weren't, any questions in terms of that process, I'll be happy to answer. But I felt really positive about the process. Questions? Again, thank you for those of you who put up with me and sandwiches from Panera for dinner on 7 different occasions.
Well, I went to the Gastonia, and I have to say there were law enforcement, there were providers, there were stakeholders, and there were good questions asked. And I told Paul later, I said, I like this concept. I said, it's logical when it makes sense. So I think it's something that needs to keep going. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to keep pushing it forward. It's got real possibilities to help everyone.
And as you know, related to that, as we shared with you last time, that was specifically mentioned in the Mercer report as something that they had a great deal of interest in and applauded us for pursuing that whole concept that Paul just talked about. So clearly it will continue to be high on our radar. The next thing, and what's coming around to you now, is last month we talked to you about the 2013-14 strategic plan and the goals that we've had throughout the last year. And you remember we had 5 goals. The management team has spent a considerable amount of time looking at those goals and evaluating how we ended the year with those goals. And we concluded that of the 5 goals, we feel very strongly that we met 4 of the 5. The 5th one, we had a lot of success in. We made a lot of progress in this year, but we have more work to go, and I'll talk about that one in a second as it relates to next year's goals. But so we're closing out the 13-14 plan, and we're entering now the 14-15 plan. So last month I shared with you that we had a management team planning day and developed the 4 broad goals that you'll see in the bold print on this piece of paper. And we spent some time since we last met with you at your May meeting trying to develop the benchmarks to measure throughout the year and to report back to you throughout the year, and at the end of the year next year, how well did we achieve the goals that we set. So here is where we are at this point. Again, it says draft on it, but it still needs to be tweaked a little bit with our leadership team. The first goal that we had was, we felt it was important to continue the goal that we had this year, and that is to demonstrate stability as a managed care organization, as an MCO. You'll see there that we have 4 key benchmarks that we want to rate ourselves against for the year. One of them relates to what Bill was describing earlier with our medical loss ratio. That we want to make sure that our medical loss ratio is at 98% or less. So that will continue to be the goal. We didn't have a floor in that this year. That's a hard number because we're, as you'll see later on, we're really wanting to focus the attention of the organization towards consumer outcomes and really use that as our barometer or to see if consumers are getting the right services by the success they're having, not by how much money we spend, but by the outcomes of their success or satisfaction with services. So our goal on the money side is just to not overspend, and our goal with consumer outcomes and provider outcomes is going to be more qualitative driven rather than quantitative driven. We think it's important to continue to pay clean claims timely so that our providers remain stable, and so you'll see that as a second. We think it's important to continue to resolve grievances when somebody has a concern with the organization, to be responsive to those concerns, be it through a consumer or a provider or a community stakeholder, and to also process authorization requests timely so that services can get delivered to consumers in a timely way. The second goal, develop and enhance the overall culture of partners in behavioral health management. This one specifically relates to the one that I said we didn't say that we fully met this past year, and we carried forward slightly to this one. You remember last year, the one that we had that we said we didn't fully meet, that was to become one entity, become partners and not three separate entities, and to integrate. You remember we did a lot of the business mapping, process mapping that we did, and try to bring all that together. Again, we made huge strides in that, but feel like we still have work to get it. So that one feeds into this one a little bit. You'll see on the first bullet point is to have a staff retention rate, and that was there was a lot of debate about that at the management team level about whether that should be a goal or not. But at the end of the day, the majority of the people concluded that we need to make sure that we do retain a solid, attractive workforce that gives stability to our organization. One of the things that's critical for us as we're larger is that some certain people within the organization lost their ability to feel connected because we are so big. And when we have all staff meetings, there's a lot of people in there, and they lose some of their ability to offer input. They prefer the smaller environments where they have a more direct opportunity. So throughout the year, I'm going to have a goal to make sure that we have those opportunities where I can personally meet with small groups of people to give them that opportunity to feel engaged, to offer feedback, and to offer criticism, what they might not give us or might not feel comfortable giving us in an environment where there's 100 and something people in there. The third is to conduct a staff culture assessment and achieve an overall satisfaction rating of 80% or greater. That's what we did this year. So we're going to follow up with those same sets of questions to feel, how do people feel about the communication that they're getting? How do people feel about their chance to be heard and the chance to give input and ideas? How do they feel that their department cooperates with other departments? So we have the baseline data now from doing that same survey this year, and so using those same questions, we can rate the success or the satisfaction compared to the 13-14 rating. Develop partners behavioral health management organizational philosophy document for use by all new and current partners employees. And the vision there is that we develop a document that talks about partners. What is partners? How do we see ourselves as an employer? And what's the things that are important to us as an employer? How do we see ourselves in the eyes of consumers? What are the value that we bring to the consumer population? What do we bring to our local communities? What's our connection with our providers? And do that and spell it out on paper, like where do we see partners being, so that we get held accountable to that document. But we also use that to train all of our employees so that they know what it means to be a partner's employee and what that means to them to carry out the partner's mission. The last one there is to revamp the annual staff performance process to include feedback on performance from non-supervisory staff. Again, that one there was some debate about that one, but because we're so big and because we are interrelated, we felt it was important to have managers know how their staff that they're evaluating is viewed by colleagues and peers. So that as a manager, they would hear feedback from other areas, so that if I'm evaluating Mary, that I know that Niels, can't get cooperation from Mary. He has a chance to share that information, so I can take that into consideration. Or that he says Mary's been fantastic to me, so I can recognize Mary during the evaluation process for her cooperation with other departments that it might not typically be considered. I wouldn't know that unless somebody gave me the opportunity to share that information. The third goal is to measure success in consumer outcomes and provider performance. Again, this is the one that is probably going to be the most exciting for us as an organization. This is the one that we've talked about since we became an NCO that we were looking forward to being able to turn our attention to. And you'll see there that the two goals, because they need a lot of work. And both of them are challenges to define the goals, to define the benchmarks before January, and start to use those benchmarks in January so we have 6 months worth of track record. So those, again, are separated between define what consumer outcomes are that are important to us. And clearly, the consumer partners are going to be key to doing that. Our Consumer Family Advisory Committee is going to be important to work with, to let them help us identify what is important. Those are going to be different based on the disability group that we're dealing with. Those are going to be different based on the age of the consumers that we're dealing with. So that one, again, the first 6 months is defining those and then implementing. The same for the provider performance, so that our goal is to work, again, through Paul's team and the advisory groups that we have in the provider network area to help define how do we rate our providers and how do we gauge our providers' performance and their success, and do that prior to January so that we can begin to use those requirements and expectations in our contracting with providers and choosing who we want to continue to contract with. And the last goal is to enhance partners BHM's value to the communities we serve. One of the things that we continue to talk about, what makes us different from a national managed care organization is our investment and our connection with our communities. And so we need to pay attention to that, and we need to make sure that we're cooperating with and working with county commissioners and health departments and local hospitals and law enforcement, and why that's important for us to be at the tables with them and how we value that and how they value that, so that we can continue to provide that localness that is important, whether it be with 8 counties now or 35 counties in an emergent environment. We've got to find a way to protect that and make sure that, and we talk about that all the time. We're doing that throughout the course of a month or a week. Our stakeholders get that, and they say, we realize that if you were part of a national managed care company, we wouldn't have this opportunity. We, the DSS director from Gaston County, wouldn't have this meeting with you if you were based out of Houston, Texas, or doing something. So we believe strongly in the value that we bring to the communities, and you'll see that goal number 4 is designed to enhance that and to demonstrate that in a robust way over the course of the next year. So again, those will be tweaked slightly before we launch into those starting in July, but that's the framework of what we're going to pay attention to over the course of the next year.
I'm going to stop you for a minute, or 30 minutes. We're going to close the public hearing at 6:35. And we'll need a motion to approve our budget for 2014 for Partners Behavioral Health Management.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. I remembered that this year. I remembered the other cause.
Those were the only things that I had. Again, if there's any modifications to these benchmarks, I'll get those out to everybody. And the other things related to the state communication on the budget and the proposed legislation, I'll get that out to you so you can stay current on that as well.
I have a question. What was the 5th goal that we were working on?
This past year, we had 5 goals. The one that we carried over was related to the staff culture, the integration. The other ones that we had this year, we talked about the wellness of our employees, talked about developing continuing care and responding to the gaps in needs assessment, the stability of the organization, and then positioning the organization to be responsive to the statutory Medicaid reform plan.
Anything else for your report? Let us move on into discussion agenda. First up, Mr. Newman, slate of officers.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I was unfortunate due to the weather, I was not here at the last meeting, but Melinda did give you an update on our nominating committee that we had a committee meeting and on April 16th. And our slate of officers that she reported in our minutes were Chris Thompson, Chair, Bill Farley, Vice Chair, Steve Jefferson, Treasurer. And those are before you at this time again. And this time for a vote coming from the
Coming from the standing committee. Any other nominations? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You're it. At the end of this meeting, you're it. Okay. Thank you all.
And just another quick update, there is in
Yes.
front of you a nominating committee update. We had 2 board members that were rolling off, they both, Linda Finger in Lincoln County, Barbara Anderson in Surrey, that did want to serve another term. I did get a message from Anita that the commissioners did approve Barbara's reappointment, so we're happy to have Barbara back for another term. And you do see the list of everyone that's on there, what county they're from, who they're representing as far as the commissioners and the different seats that we have. And then we do have a new appointment and a new term with Donna Salstrom from Burke County.
And this didn't go to everybody but you and me.
You may
But Anita will send it out because Mr. Epperson has asked about who's going on what term and who's being reelected and everything. So Anita can send this out tomorrow, so just look for an email, okay?
It does have on there when your term is expiring and from June 30th of 2015 or June or October 2016. Especially for treasurer this year, we're trying to keep those up and have people on those committees that can have some consistency year to year, as we have people whose terms expire and either get reappointed or we need to get them up against our end of our commitment that we can make.
Okay.
And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, and Anita will send that out tomorrow, okay? Okay, approval of policies, and that's what I was asking Mr. Walsh, is if we had to do each one of these policies separately. Everybody should have seen, we have 2 that were in your packet, and then 2 that were sent to you by email, and then came hard copy. We've got the voluntary shared leave, the provider payback, interest and penalties, the relatives, legal guardians as direct support employees, and then policy procedures, program descriptions, and plans approval and maintenance. Has everyone, that's a long one. Any comment on any 4 of these policies?
On provider payback, interest and penalties, I was wondering, towards the end of it was according to MCO Communications Bulletin, May 3rd, the penalty rate is 10%, and the monthly interest rate is 0.471. Does that interest rate apply just to the overpayment, or does it apply to the overpayment plus the penalty plus the accrued interest?
This doesn't have that.
Anything that is still outstanding, so you have the overpayment plus the penalty, and then that interest accrues based on that balance.
I wonder if we shouldn't say that the interest will apply to the total outstanding balance.
And we can take, because that is part of the procedural piece of this, and where the board would focus on the policy, but that feedback is important for us to hear, because as we bring these procedures back to our management team, that may be something that we want to address in there, especially if, you all have seen something to that extent that may be beneficial for us to consider. So I'll make a note, so that when we do that in our procedural part with management team, that it may be good to make that clear, because you're right, if someone, isn't quite certain, and even if it's one of our departments, it would be good for us to clarify that under there.
Does that help? Okay. Mr. Epperson?
What about the rationale on relatives as guardians as direct support employees?
It's not in my packet.
Relatives, legal guardians as direct support employees, where we approve the arrangement the providers have. Right?
I'm not sure. Are do you have a question about the policy itself?
Yeah, the policy.
The rationale, yeah, I mean,
We're required to have the policy,
okay.
so
I'm
what is
sorry, that's
in
not
this
in my
particular policy
packet.
addresses what's required legally.
This is, no.
And then the procedural
Yeah,
part is
yeah,
how
my
we
board
get.
members was we're doing it because we have to have this in order to implement that concept.
And we have one already that's in place actually.
Okay.
However, the language needs to be.
Thank you so much.
really clarified that this is a relative or legal guardian who is a direct support employee of a provider agency. Whereas the terminology and all that we had before could be a little ambiguous and unclear. So what we try to do is make this a very clear policy based on the rules and regulations.
It's happened in a number of LME MCOs where they had the relative as provider was originally the name, and it was a bit of a misnomer, because it misled people into thinking that the relative was a provider. In reality, what it is, they become an employee of a network provider and provide services to their own relative, and there's rules behind that, as even Ms. Short had mentioned earlier today, the waiver and everything. We already had a policy, so this largely just cleans up the language, tries to make it a little more clear as to the process.
To me, it looks like a very clear and clean policy. I was just wondering, the rationale is in order to be able to implement that concept, we have to have this policy.
And we've been implemented, and we
Okay,
have,
well,
so
okay.
this
We're
this
cleaning up
largely.
something we already have.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, so that answers your question?
Yes. Yes.
Any other questions about the four policies? Is there a motion to approve all four of the policies? And I'm not going to name them all again. Motion? Ms. Griffin, is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Anderson, any further discussion? All in favor of approving the four policies, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Okay, let's move on to CEO evaluation. Ms. Farley.
Motion to go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143, 318, 11A6. Partners behavioral health management to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of employment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual employee, or to hear and investigate a complaint or grievance or charge against an individual employee.
Okay. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we're going to take a few minutes break, get this food cleaned up, released, dismissed, whatever.
I think release is the right word.
Is released the right word?
It might even be parole.
Farley?
We give a 10% bonus to Rick Melton, 10% of his annual salary based upon the accomplishments towards the success of the strategic goals for partners.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, okay. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, wait a minute. All right, wait a minute. I gotta get this down too. Okay, adjourn. Ms. Griffin? Griffin, I always get your name wrong. Is there a second?
I'm going to take Farley's place.
Hold on 1 minute, let me tell everybody. Look at your package, we're not meeting in July, the next meeting will be August the 21st here. Chris will be your new chair with Steve.
Thank you, Ms. Posito.
With Steve. Mr. Farley is vice chair. Okay? See you all in August. Okay.